G'day Phys 3071 students. This short video is going to explain how to set up Visual Studio Code and essentially connect to the smp-teaching server so that you can run your C++ code throughout the semester. At the start, we'll download the software. So the way that I got to the software is you can just come up into Google and you can type VS Code in. And I'll also provide a link to the actual download page just in case your Google doesn't actually take you to this page. Now I want to mention that VS Code it's developed by Microsoft, right? You can kind of see down here, but it is an open source system. Okay, and there's it supports a lot of different coding languages, C, Fortran, C++. I think there's some MATLAB extensions that you can put into it. I haven't actually played around with those, but it is quite a good code editing software system program. So even if you're wanting to run your code locally on your machine, so say you're running a Mac or you're running a Linux operating system on your local machine, I would say probably download this and use this as your code editing base. So this tutorial is primarily for a Windows operating system because it's a little bit harder to get that to run the code locally on a Windows operating system. So we want you guys to connect to that smp-teaching server that's running that Linux-based system. So the other thing that I want to mention is there is a similar program called Microsoft Visual Studio Code. So don't get confused. We don't want this one. Okay, it's got this purple emblem. We don't actually want that one. That's a whole nother kettle of fish, and we don't really want to deal with that. We want this Visual Studio Code. So it's this blue emblem. So we'll just go to this download link, and you can see here, right? It is capable of being downloaded and run on multiple different operating systems, but because we're on a Windows system, we want to download this Windows one. It'll start downloading, and once the download's finished, we'll start the installer. So we'll do what we do with pretty much every piece of software that we download. We'll sign our lives away, as we always do with these agreements, and we'll just keep everything default. Okay, so don't change any of these. Just keep everything default to what it is. So it's a relatively small program, so it shouldn't take too long to download and install. And we just want to go launch when finished. So it should launch the program when finished. And we should have something that'll look like this. So for everyone that's kind of decided to use this software to run locally, this is kind of where your tutorial will kind of end. But essentially, you just want to come up here and you can open your folders, and you'll be able to just navigate through all your local folder system and open up whatever you want to open up that way. However, if we want to use this software to connect to that smp-teaching server, we actually need to first connect to the VPN. Okay, so if we were on the UQ network, right? So if we were on campus, we wouldn't need to connect to the VPN. However, if we're not, right, if we're at home or somewhere else that isn't directly connected to the UQ network, then we need to connect to the VPN. So all of those instructions are in that worksheet 1, how to get this software, this Cisco Anytime VPN software. We just want to connect. You should get something like this. I'll connect to you. Not, right, if we're at home or somewhere else that isn't directly connected to the UQ network, then we need to connect to the VPN. So all of those instructions are in that worksheet 1, how to get this software, this Cisco Anytime VPN software. We just want to connect. You should get something like this. I'll connect using my staff details. So now we're connected to the VPN, so we should be able to see anything that's on the UQ network. Our computer should essentially be able to see it. So it's almost like we are on campus, connected to it on campus. So the next step is we need to install some extensions to VS Code. So as I mentioned, it's an open source program. So pretty much anything that you could think of to improve the usability of this software in terms of making your life a little bit easier in coding, someone has most likely already written a little widget or a little extension to do that function. So we just want to come up to the extensions button up here, which are these 4 squares here. And what we want to type in here is we just want to search for SSH. So we'll just go SSH, and it's this first one. We want to install this first one here, this remote SSH. Okay. Now, if the first one, once the first one's installed, if this other one here, this remote SSH editing configuration file isn't installed as well, you'll need to go ahead and also install that. However, it should install with this remote SSH extension as well. So just give it a second to install. So you can see now that it's installed, we can actually see that the remote SSH editing configuration files is it also installed. Okay, so we didn't need to click install as well. Now, if you noticed, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but you've got now a little green box down here that wasn't there before. That's got this greater than and less than sign, these kind of 2 arrows. We want to come down here to the bottom left-hand corner and click on that green box. And we're going to want to go up to Open SSH Configuration File. We want to select the first one here. Okay, now this path here, this might look a little bit different on your computer. Maybe this name here, it'll have your name. Okay, it's got my name here because that's what my username is for this computer, but that'll most likely be replaced by what your username is for your computer. So it's just the first one that you want to click on. Now, VS Code, it automatically generates this file, this config file that it's put in user daniel.ssh. And we just want to change some of these default values that VS Code has filled in. So we want to set the host to smp-teaching .smp.uq.edu.au. And we'll have the host name be the same. And the user here, what you will need to do as a student is put your student ID here. So that's that S4, 5, whatever number that you would use to log into Blackboard. Okay, for me, for the connection to actually work for me, it's my staff ID. Okay, so don't copy what I've got down here. You'll need to put in what your username is, your student ID number there. Okay, once you've written all this in, okay, we'll just double check smp-teaching.smp.uq.edu. That's all right. That's the same, and I've got my username here. We'll save this file. And we'll come back down to this to that green square. Okay. Now the drop-down box comes down again at the top, and we want to click Connect to Host. And now we should see smp-teaching.smp.uq.edu. It should open up a whole new window, and we can just go Allow. Okay. This is just some Windows Defender stuff. So you can see it's saying down here in this bottom corner. I'll just make this window a little bit bigger. Okay. You can see down here it's saying opening remote. Okay, so it's trying to connect. It's trying to actually connect to this SMP teaching server. And you should have a drop-down window that's at the very top. Okay, you've got a few options here. You've got Linux, Windows, and Mac. Now it's saying what's the platform for this SMP teaching server. It's a Linux. Okay, it's a Linux platform. It's the Linux operating system. So we'll select Linux. So that just kind of lets the SSH protocol know how to connect. And once it's made a connection, you should get this fingerprint coming up here. Okay, this is fine. This is just how the SSH protocol works. You just hit continue, and it's going to ask you for a password. Okay, now that password is the same password that you'd use to log into Blackboard. All right, it's that same student ID password. Okay. So I'll just type it in here for me. And you can see down here, right, down in the bottom left-hand corner, we're now connected, right? It says SSH, and it's got the server name here, okay? There's a couple of messages coming up here. Now, these messages now are associated to the actual server. They're not associated to your computer, okay? So you don't have to worry too much about them. So just make this window large. So everything I do from now on is actually on that teaching server. Okay, so keep that in mind. You're not on your local machine anymore. So if I come up here and I go open folder, right, all of these folders here, they might look very similar to what you've got on your local machine, right? You've got a desktop folder, you've got a documents, a downloads, it's probably a music and pictures folder. Okay, however, these are folders on that teaching server, so keep that in mind. So we'll go to documents and we'll open up the documents folder on the teaching server. Now it might ask you for your password again here. And once it's connected, it'll most likely ask you, yeah, do you trust these files that are in this directory? It's like, yeah, I'm the author of it. Yeah, I know what these files are. So you can see over here on the left, I've got a few different folders in my my documents folder on that SMP cluster. Okay, I've got the worksheet 2. I've just got a test folder here. If you guys want to make another folder, it's very easy. You just come up here and you just click on this little add folder button here. So if we do that, we can just add a folder. We can say test 2, right, folder. We save it and it's right there, okay? And if we wanted to jump in and work in stuff in that folder, we can just click on it. You can see that little arrows flicks down there, okay? So let's go to this worksheet 2 folder. You can see there's some files in here, right, that I've got. And I'll open up that HelloWorld .cpp file. And we'll go through and actually show you guys how to run this code now. So keep in mind, remember, all these files are on the server. They're not on your local machine. Now, what should have happened when you connected is you should have gotten this extra window down here, okay? You've got a few different selections on the ribbon here, okay? We want to select terminal. If this window didn't pop up, okay, what you want to do is you want to come up to the top and you want to click on terminal up here on the top right, top left-hand part of the window, okay, and you'll just hit new terminal, and that should open this up for you. But you want to make sure that you're in the terminal window. So this is exactly the same as if you just opened a terminal window on that remote desktop system. Okay, so everything's the same here. So we're in the documents folder. So we can't actually, we don't want to be in the documents folder. We actually want to be in the folder where this CPP file is. Okay. So that's actually in worksheet 2. So if I do an ls here, I can see all the folders that are actually in documents, right? I've got my test 2 folder, I've got the test folder, and I've got the worksheet 2. So let's cd into worksheet 2 folder. And just to make sure we are definitely in the folder that we want to be, we'll just do another ls and we can see all of the files that are in that folder, and they all match up with what's showing in here on the Visual Studio Explorer window. So we've got this CPP file, okay, this HelloWorld CPP file, and I want to run this code. Now, C is a little bit different to MATLAB or Python in that, like, there's no real, like, run this code button and it just runs. We have to first compile the code. So we come up here to the comments, and the compile line is actually in the comments. And you guys, when you write all your code, you should put that compile line at the very top of your code, so that if you come back to your code, you can see, okay, I need to run this line to compile it, and then I can actually run the program. Okay, so we'll copy that compile line into where we need to go, into the terminal window. And we'll hit enter. And if it's compiled successfully, okay, no messages should really come up, okay? If there were errors in the code, we would see them come up in the compile line, all right? when we compile. So for example, if I delete this semicolon here on this return line, okay, and I save it, and I rerun that compile line, you can see that there's an error that's come up. Okay, so it actually hasn't compiled. So even if we went and tried to run our code, which I'll show you guys how to do in a second, it wouldn't actually work. There would be nothing to run. Okay, so we'll put that semicolon back, save the CPP file, and we'll recompile. And there's no error message, which is great. Keep in mind that just because there's no error messages when you compile doesn't necessarily mean that the code will run correctly. There are other errors that the compiler can't pick up. Okay, so be aware of that while you're coding throughout the semester. Now, to actually run this code, okay, you can see here that there's another file that's in this folder. It's called HelloWorld, and we generated that HelloWorld file using this compile line. Okay, so we've got the GCC G++, which is the type of compiler. We've got the script that we want to compile, this helloworld.cpp. This minus wall argument is just, it's checking for all kinds of errors. And then this -o, whatever follows after that, that's what the name of the executable file will be. Okay, so that's the program, essentially. That's what's going to run. So we've named it Hello World, but I could have named it whatever I wanted to. So to run this executable file, to run this program, I do a dot dash and then Hello World. So the name of that executable file, and I'll press enter, and it's run, right? And the way that I know it's run is because it's printed Hello World to the terminal, which is exactly what I wanted the program to do. It's just this one line here. This is all it's doing, and it's just printing Hello World. Okay, so that kind of runs you through how to run the code, how to run a piece of code on that SMP teaching server using VS Code.